Good morning, welcome to our live talk program. This is Lord Grub here, your host on Revive Reform Radio, doing our live talk program covering current events on your Thursday morning. Current events this morning here, and we're looking at a topic: voting with your dollar, presence, influence, and support. So, voting with your dollar, presence, influence, and support. This is our topic for this morning here as we look at this live program here. There's some issues that are going on without taking one particular issue. So, welcome again to our live talk program. Hopefully, you had a blessed night rest and you're ready for today. Let's pray. Our Father, who art in heaven, we thank you again for the blessings of your word. We thank you for life. We thank you for liberty and the clarity of mind that you give us by thy spirit and by thy word. Pray to may bless us, dear Lord, that as you continue to guide us along, that we might walk humbly before thee all the days of our lives. This is our prayer in Jesus' name. Amen. Well, thanks again, and thanks for stopping by as we do our live talk program. And this morning we're covering here again the topic: voting with your dollar, presence, influence, and support. And what I'm talking about here is how to counter powerful trends, how to counter powerful trends. Now, normally these trends are powerful, especially because of the carnality of us, and are dependent upon what is carnal, what is physical, and the draw of sin. But notice here, it might not be that we always win when it comes on the counter and powerful influence. Sometimes you're up against a juggernaut, you're up against a monopoly, and you're not gonna win. But you can do what you can to not give your support to its continued success. Very important. You might not change anything, but you can be out of the game. And so it's important. So the thought here is that you're fighting for your family and those you love. And you're doing this in spite of if the whole society is going to go up in flames. You see, the whole society might want to go up in flames in one way or the other. And you decide that you're going to fight for yourself and for your family. And because you love your family, this is what you're going to do, and those you love around you. Those you influence, those you have connections with, and you see they're going on a certain path, and everybody might say, well, we all going on that path. Why not join us? And you have a choice to be like, yeah, I'm not gonna join. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna counter it. I'm gonna work against it. I'm gonna work against it with whatever I have, with my dollar, my presence, my influence, my support. I'm going to work against it, and I might not be winning the battle, but it kind of doesn't matter in the end because they're all going up in smokes anyhow. So why join them? At least I can stay over here and go it a different way. And when I think about this, at least when I started thinking about this thought, I didn't think about Noah. But as I was wrapping up my thoughts, our time was running out on me this morning here, but I started thinking about this from last night or yesterday. That as I was looking at this, looking at some pieces of article, and this thought came to my mind, and then I was reading some things that came to my mind. I was like, and Noah at the end came to my mind. The story of Noah. I'm not gonna go there, but it's just all of a sudden I finished, and then all of a sudden, sometimes it gets better when you finish. That's sometimes the reality here. So I'm making a presentation, halfway through the presentation makes more sense. In other words, it come together better while I'm presenting it or after I finish. I've had that many times in the mornings. I'm doing a presentation and I'm having a hard time communicating exactly my thoughts. And when I finish, the thoughts come together because I guess your brain configures. So anyhow, Noah came to my mind because you see, I was imagining what would life be with Noah. He's there and he's doing it because he believes in God and he loves his family. He loves those around him, but the righteous became older, they die off, like in the sense of Melchizedek. And he's there by himself. And everybody's going whoring after carnality. Basically, that's what it is. We could say whoring after Satan, but whoring after carnality. And as they're doing this, you're kind of left there, and it now becomes 8 of you. And that can be questionable in itself because it's not 8 of you, and it's 8 of you, and there's a friend over here, and a cousin over here. It's just you and your kids, and their wives, and that's it. So how do you do this? And I believe this is the process. Sometimes if it's going to be a small remnant, let it be a small remnant. But don't say, I'm going to be part of what's going on because, hey, you can't win. And that's where most people's attitude is. You can't win in here. Why fight it? So fighting for your family and those you love when the whole society is going up in flames is the concept here I want to communicate to you. And I believe it's important for you to tap into this, or at least listen to me here and think about it. Think about what you're going to do. What are you doing right now? Because somebody might say, well, why fight that? Well, sometimes it's not fighting it, so to speak, as I say, countering a powerful trend. It is just taking care of your own self and not going up in flames. But people say, well, you can't do anything. The church is going bad. What are you going to do? Well, you can preserve yourself. And people say it, right? Say it. And they always say it cannot be accomplished. And that's normally what people say. Whatever it is, whatever you're going up against, whatever you're trying to not support. It could be a store. See, a certain store is taken over. And that store is taken over everywhere it goes. There's various different stores like that. And you decide you're not going to support the store that is taken over. Somebody might say, well, what is it? You're probably going to spend $70 a month at the other store. That's not going to keep them afloat. What is $70 when you have staff to pay and stuff like that? Well, I just always look at it that $70 might keep them open for another month or two longer after probably the accumulation of 5 to 10 years. So my $70 probably count for a month or two operation after a certain period of time accumulated. And so I keep them going because they probably provide a service that the other big store is not going to provide, because they're just going to basically take over and then cut services. And this store is offering me services, and because they offer me a wide array of services, it's not as profitable. And that becomes an issue. So somebody said, well, what's the point? Well, the point is they're offering me certain services. It's just like, there's the United States Postal Service, which is not as profitable, but it's required to serve a certain type of product because they serve a wide array of product. You have various different offerings, first class mail, all this stuff. And then you have FedEx, you have UPS, you have DHL. So somebody could say, well, the United States Postal Service is a failure. Look at UPS, look at DHL. Well, look at FedEx. Well, I understand, but FedEx, UPS, and DHL only offer certain products. So they offer the products that are more profitable, that they can make more profit off after. And so when Aunt Tilly is in the middle of, say, Montana, in the middle of nowhere, and she need a letter go out, FedEx is not going to be there for them, for her. UPS is not going to be there for her, but the United States Postal Service is going to be there for her because it's something that the government offer. So somebody could say, well, it's not profitable. We need to cut service to that lady, so she have to drive 20 miles instead to go deliver one first-class mail. At that point, might as well she drive across the country and drive it to wherever she want to send it to. And so when you look at that, somebody could say, well, it's not worth it. We can't support certain because it's always about profitability or whatever. Why go up against certain systems? And I say, well, that's your opinion. My opinion is that sometimes you could go with a bigger guy that, yeah, it's more profitable. It's harder to win at him, but he's just not offering certain services. And he's never going to offer certain services. So it might seem more profitable, but as a service provider, is a terrible service provider. So I'll support this guy over here because he's supporting me. But somebody will like, oh no, cut services. Yeah, but then, cut services, you hurt a lot of people. So this is where sometimes I see certain trends, and I'm trying to keep the talk generic because there's so much things going on. There's so many big juggernauts that come into town, shut down small businesses. And the people in the town basically say, well, the small business was offering me 20 products, 20 types of products. This big company going to offer me 15 types of product, but they're going to offer me probably more variety in those 15. But, they're really cheap products and junk food and stuff like that. So they say, well, I want the cheap stuff. So I go to the place that's giving me the cheap stuff. I shut down the small guy, but the small guy is going to shut down. I'm going to lose those are the 5 products and services. And then what? and then I'm at the mercy at this other company that's giving me less offerings or worse service, or you can't even find somebody in the store where you need to, because they're operating at razor thin margins and stuff like that. So they hire very little people and pay them the cheapest. So somebody would say it's not worth protesting with my dollar or my presence or my influence or my support. And I say it's worth it, but people don't understand how to build stuff. And so that many times you make you have to think outside of the box. So I deal with this in even the things I do. I always have to be thinking, how do I do this? Because I have to know most people want the service, but also oftentimes they don't want the product. They don't want to pay for it. They'll pay the big guy, but they won't pay the small guy. I deal with that all the time. A person say, I come to you, I listen to you every day, but I wouldn't give you $1, but they'll give the big guy $1 because it's just something in the psyche. So are you voting for things that are for the positive well-being of your family, your church, and your society at large? Notice I didn't say what looks like the positive for your positive well-being, but what are the positive well-being? Are you supporting things that's going to really benefit you and bless you? Or are you just supporting things that, you might feel like it's the right thing to do? And people say that all the time. This thing here don't really add much value to me, but I support it because it's the right thing to support. But do I support things that are of true value, that's building up? And do I cut support from things that are destroying my life, the life of the people in the society? And how do I do what I do? This is why I believe you preach certain things. Now, Christ says in Matthew chapter 5, verse 13 through 16. Matthew 5, verse 13 through 16. See if I can tie this up a little bit more. Try to tap some loose ends here. Matthew 5, verse 13 through 16 says, "Ye are the salt of the earth. But if the salt has lost its savor, wherewithal shall it be salted? It is thenceforth good for nothing, but to be cast out and to be trodden under foot of men." So you're the salt of the earth. Right. So when you're the salt of the earth, you're the preservative of the earth. You're the thing that keep the things from going bad. So sometimes you have to look at it from that point of view. It's not so much that there is, because salt is normally little grains and it goes into things and it's salted. And if you're not careful with salt, you can, you put too much in because it has so much of an impact. So Christ is saying salt cannot have its impact, but we're supposed to have an impact. So our impact is just to preserve. Sometimes our impact is not there because we're going to have a total change. Our impact is to preserve. We're just preserving things from getting bad or spoil. And that to me is just the simpler way of looking at what I'm talking about. Voting with your dollar, presence, influence, support. Sometimes just by saying something, you hold back the winds of strife. Sometimes just by saying a word, you hold back somebody from probably killing somebody. You hold back somebody from killing themselves. You hold back a trend that is going in the wrong direction, that's going to take out the society. Sometimes by just giving a word, calling the police, reporting something that you see happen, a crime. Sometimes by not supporting a certain entity or store. Sometimes by preaching against something. What it simply does is it doesn't change the people's heart. Because, you protesting something or you voting against something or you're not physically going somewhere, you might not change the general trend, but what it is, you put the kibosh in it, you slow it down, you make the people think twice what they're doing. That's all sometimes we're doing. Just giving a word of protest, not being there sometimes. There's a program, and the program, it's probably, say, 50 people is a capacity and 10 people didn't show up. And everybody know why those 10 people didn't show up. That's just kind of slow down the process. Let them think twice about it. You're just trying to preserve it from going, over the cliff like lemons. You're just everybody running over the cliff to go kill themselves. So again, we're there to preserve. It is not, sometimes I won't be a terrible, a massive change, but we're there to make sure that voice is there, present in the world, in the church, in people's home, to say to them, don't go down that road. They might not go down the road, but they might not be converted either. It's just that you're preserving things. And so it's important for us to still play our part and not say, well, we can't do anything about it, so what's the point? Well, sometimes it's just the preservation. And sometimes somebody know that you're going to turn up. And if you turn up, then they're gonna have to tune up and readjust. But when you don't, then what happens is that things go real bad, real fast. So verse 14 says, "Ye are the light of the world. A city that is set on a hill cannot be hid. Neither do men light a candle and put it under a bushel, but on a candlestick, and it giveth light unto all that are in the house. Let your light so shine before men, that they may see your good works and glorify your Father which is in heaven." Notice the righteous has good works. You might go to churches and they go to Paul's writing, who work like no other man work because he met Jesus. And yet from Paul's writing, so many speakers will come away with this idea that there's no such thing as works, just grace. But Christ simply say here, if you're the righteous, you have good works. And the good works can't be hid. Men will see those good works. People observe you, your neighbors observe you, your family observe you. So then you need to be observable for Christ's sake. Make sure when they see Christ in you. They don't see, a stumbling, bumbling mess, one bag of confusion and discombobulation and darkness. They should see something good. And when they see us, they can't but see us. Your co-workers are going to see you. You're seen by men. And the testimony should be that they can see Christ in you if they never seen it in nobody else. And that's the beautiful. So you should let your light so shine before men. You shouldn't hide it. So again, whatever that process is, whether it be by your dollar, by your presence, by your influence, what you say, what you do, by your support, how you support for certain things. If you're supporting it, then you're supporting the evil. You're letting not your light shine, but the darkness in you shine. So that's important. And as it says here, a city that's set on a hill cannot be hid. It's not that sometimes you even want to make your voice be heard. It's just that it can't be hid. It's impossible to be hid because, again, light shines, and when it shines, especially when it's dark. So, again, that tells me that the light is supposed to shine when it's dark. In the daytime, it's bright. So if you're light, you're not going to outdo the sun. But when it gets dark, people will be able to see you and see your light shining. And that's just the reality. And so if we say now we're up against something that is impossible to overcome, it's time for a light to shine. If you're up against things that are just so much evil in the society and it's useless and futile, well, that's now the time for the light to shine. As you know, the evildoers turn out at night, but light shed some beams into the darkness and dispel the darkness. So your influence might be small, but you use what you have. That's all it is. No matter how small your influence is, make sure that that influence is used. Make sure that that dollar that you have in your pocket is used properly. Make sure that your presence is used properly. Make sure that your influence is used properly and your support is used properly. Even if it's just a small support, your support should be felt. And if your support is not felt, then you have no talk. There's many people that they will never support a good cause. They'll never support those who are suffering. They'll never support those who are oppressed. And so then you have no talk. Because for those who are suffering or for those who need your support, you don't give it. You never make your voice be known. You never even call, hey, look, I'm supporting you. Or I'm praying for you. I'm something. Then basically, you become part of the problem. Because, you sometimes can't change something. But sometimes if somebody's working to change something, even a word to say to the person, hey, I support what you do. I support what you do. That alone is just sometimes just what keeps somebody going, and, let them know that, say, even if a person don't have the ability to come and help with their physical hand or contribute with $1 or whatever, somebody know you're praying for them. Somebody know you're whatever. You give that support, and that support is worth something. So the influence that you have might be small, but you make the influence be known. You don't hide it. You don't take it and put it on a bushel. You don't take it and put it on a bed. You don't cover it up. You want it to be known because that's part of the problem. Evildoers, one thing I've noticed, I remember over the years I've observed that evildoers like to be in your face with whatever they're promoting. and they want to hang it and make it all hang out. And so if you're the righteous, it's good for you to be able to make sure that whatever you're supporting and doing, let it hang. And somebody need to know that if I'm for something, I'm for it. If I'm not for it, I'm going to try my best to try to get it out there. I'm trying to try my best to have a means, when means are cut off and I can't go and do this or do that, but I have a little money in my hand. I'm not thinking, how can I use this money and make this money have a telling influence? So I put it out there, and somebody can even come, as you know, you can go on YouTube, you can come here, and you can hear my voice, even if it's only 10 people listening, even if it's only 50 people listening. Somebody say, well, what's that? Well, that's just 50 more than zero. So that's how I look at it. Now, again, when you think about your life as a Christian, you think about it that there's passive and there's active influence. And so first, let's talk about some of the passive influence. Some of the passive influence that we have is how we spend our dollar and what we consume, whether it be food or by our eyes. So again, when you think about it as a righteous person, the casinos would go out of business if it was for you and me. That's important to know. Every casino would close or would suffer financial loss. So somebody might say, well, how am I preserving the earth? What is it you're supporting? Where does your dollar go? Where does your time go? Where does your presence be felt? Because they count everybody that goes through those doors. And then after they count everybody that goes through the door, then they count how much money was spent for the night. And then they divide that. And they say, well, for everybody come through the door, everybody spend $500. So they say, well, per person. So they say, well, if everybody spend $5. So if we get double the amount of people come through the door, we can double the amount of money that comes through. Even if it's only $500, but it's $500 ahead. So passively, it's just that they're not going to be in business. Passively, if you stay away from drugs, the drug manufacturers and dispensers, the marijuana, growers and dispensers will be out of business or will suffer loss. So we don't support that. Somebody said, what do you mean, legal or illegal drugs? All manufacturers of drugs, legal or illegal. We're not in support of that. And yet, if you're in an emergency, so forth and so on. But beyond that, there's no need for taking drugs every day. So we do natural. Well, give me a second. I'll get to the passive, the active. So, same thing with pornographic media. There's various different type of pornographic media. You don't go to the website. You don't watch the videos. You don't download anything. They're going to suffer loss, or they're going to go out of business. That might be passive in the sense that you're not actively trying to shut them down, but you're not supporting with your money. You're not supporting with your presence. And again, somebody said, but that's not going to stop them because you never support and then they're still doing business. Yeah, but that's just one less customers. And I can say I'm not part of the corrosiveness of the earth. You're not part of the corrosiveness of the earth. You're part of the preservative. Because if you weren't here and I wasn't there, the whole world would go up in smoke. Because things would just get out of control. But there's a hand that's holding back. I remember when President Obama was in power, and it was full steam ahead for every gay rights and so forth. And I remember even going over into Pennsylvania to this group, and they're promoting. It's a religious group, and they were promoting, not supporting it. I was just learning about them, and they're promoting and supporting, trying to overturn, I guess the First Amendment, and the idea that the protection for the church is to discriminate. That's how they look at it, against homosexual. But full steam ahead. And while they're giving that full steam ahead with the homosexuality, all the major diseases, gonorrhea, syphilis, AIDS, all their numbers shoot up in America. Because the gays were like, man, full steam ahead. So what it is, we don't promote and support certain things. And then by voice, we preach against it. That's the active part. But the passive part, we ain't supporting that. We ain't part of the corrosiveness of the society. It's important for you to think about that. And so somebody might say, but we didn't have no active change. To a certain degree, because if you remember watching what was going on then, they knew that the enemy of their freedoms, so to speak, quote unquote freedoms, was the Christian. They knew that when it came down to a vote, the church members would turn out and vote against it. So this is why they decided to go to the judicial system and not try to go it through vote, because they realized real quickly, especially the black part of the community, African American people of African American descent overwhelmingly will vote against gay rights. So then they say, well, we can't go there. We got to go to the courts. So somebody might say, well, but they won in the end. Well, they won all the STDs and they got some rights. And you see some of those things are being rolled back. So, but it's just the important thing, lesson there for me in my mind wasn't win or loss, was the idea that for somebody I say, well, you're up against an innumerable odd. Yeah, but that at least those know that says, look, there's a holdback, and the holdback is people who believe in the Bible. So it has a telling tale. There's been court cases between, I forget his name, he died now, but the head of Playboy and the head of Jerry Falwell, and have gone fought it in court. I'm not supportive of either of them, but it's just the whole idea that these evildoers always know that there's certain people who believe in the Bible who is their enemy, and they want to stop them from corroding the society. So your influence has something to do with it, and it might be passive at times. Sometimes it might be active, but don't discount your small influence. How powerful of a role it plays. When Lot was in Sodom, they knew that Lot was different from them. That's very important. They knew it. It was not like it was something kept a secret. Let your light so shine before men. And so, they probably was mad at him for a while, because he was not part of them. And it's important for people to know. It might not be accepted in the society that you're not like the rest of the society, but that's part of the preservative, because they know, oh yeah, he's going to protest. I've been in so many churches, and every time they want to do certain things, just the thought of me wearied them. That's why after a while I just decide to get out and just let them do what they have to do. But because what happened, they know, oh, you're not gonna be for certain things, so they think, oh man, we gotta sell it to this person over here, because they probably start protesting in church, and that's just the reality. Think about it: the junk food manufacturers and sellers, you and I, they would go out of business if it was for me and you. It's very important. Somebody say, well, that's just one household income, and what is one household income in comparison to 100 and something million household income across the United States? It might not be much, but it's still one. So when the society is going to hell, just remember that thought also, that, well, they're going to hell because they want it. So we see people coming out with all their different cancers from all their poisonous meats that they eat. Well, the wages of sin is death. So again, they won. But winning is not always good. That's why we work to bless the society, because we realize, we love our family, our friends, those we're acquainted with, more than probably they love themselves. So, you try to be an influence to hold back the evil, because you holding back evil only benefit them anyhow, because if they go full headlong over the cliff, well, they're all dead anyhow. Think about violent entertainment and the purveyors of violent entertainment. Again, it's the same thing. When you're the righteous, you simply see that you might not be able to stop them, but every new video game, every new violent movie, every new horror movie that you are not a supporter of, that's one less ticket in the cinema. That's one less download. That's one less view passively that they don't have. That's just less customer. But everybody would support them, then it would be a monopoly, and they would just be winning all the way. Somebody need that support in it. And there's a thought where I'm going, so I want to stick with me here, still developing. So those are the passive. Now the active is you actively vote if you have to, preach, because we must preach against all these things. You actively work against it. You see, to me, you first have to passively go against something before you actively start preaching it. I know there's hypocrites in our society that they will preach against something that they're supporting. You can't be supporting drug use and pornography and junk food and violent entertainment and gambling. You can't be supporting it and then preaching against it. And because sooner or later you're going to start preaching, and all you're going to be doing is probably supporting the next, you're going to start preaching. It's first important for you to pull back from your NFL and avoid that violent purveyors, and then preach against it next. And that's the active part. But to me, the passive is always important. And the first step, you have to stop consuming the media before you start preaching against the media. And then that will work. And that influence grows. Because as you start preaching, you start to try to influence others to do the same way. I praise the Lord if somebody listened to me and they turn off all that violence. Probably I just save them from beating their wives and their kids to death. That's all. It's worth the effort. Even if it's just one family. Somebody said, well, it's just one. Well, if I save one woman from dying from the hand of her husband, I think it was worth all the effort. Every day I come on here, I think it's worth the effort. So to me, that's the whole value of it. Even if it's just one, it's worth one less death. So much of the evil we see in society is because there is enough supporters of the evil activity and individuals that are doing the evil to make that evil continuous or continues. So look at the evil that's going on. In order for it to continue, you have to have supporters. You pull the supporters and you're not going to stop individuals from wanting to do the evil. But what will happen is that the thing will go out of business. It need the support. You see, people are always looking to express themselves some way. But if they don't have supporters, then the evil gonna stop. They might keep doing it themselves, but it's gonna stop. But if you know that there's enough people who want a thing, and you say, I'm gonna do it, and the people support it, it makes it easier for you to do it. And you can do it on a bigger scale. You can do it grand. Because there's enough people willing to pay for the grandiose thoughts and ideas. But if, there's a lot of people you meet in society that they're loony, they're crazy, right? They're lunatics, so to speak. They're fanatical. And you talk to me and be like, that's a mad person. And then you start finding out that that person is now famous. So 5 years later, you see them, they're famous. You're like, whoa, that crazy guy with that crazy idea. And then you have a whole bunch of followers. You'll be like, man, that's phenomenal. And all of a sudden you realize that part of the corrosiveness that goes on in society is that people can't find enough supporters to make it large. But if the circus came to town and nobody went to the circus, would the circus be popular? No. Ain't nobody going. Why they're gonna go in a tent, spend the money to bring a tent to a town or rent out of say a big facility and perform in this facility to nobody? They're not going to do it. They're going to go find somebody else to do it in their life. And that same circus performer is going to go down the road and he's going to say, I probably need to go back to school. I need to be a doctor. There's a lot of suffering in the world. I need to go help relieve those suffering. And that's the reality. So you take anything in the society that's destroying the society. And you take them and you say, look, I'm going to show you. Here's basketball. And here is 20,000 young men this year is going to try to become a basketball star. And then 1,000 of them really have a shot, but really came down to about 50. And out of that 50, after the first year, probably another 30 or 35 going to get washed up. And there's 15. And I say the problem is because of that 20,000 that wanted to get a shot and all the supporters. They're willing to pay the tickets. They're willing to watch it. They're willing to do this. And so all these young men now, instead of going to school, focus on getting a grade, do their best in school, they're failures because they want to be rap star and basketball star, football star. And most of them are going to be washed up and the society's going to be messed up with all these dreamers that they make it. What we need to do is stop supporting that. But somebody said, well, if you cut off support, that's not going to do anything. You're just one person. I know. But I'm at least one less. Praise the Lord. And that's how you look at it, because you see the devastation that process caused in a society to create all these dunce young men because they know, I don't have to make no effort over here because I'm going to be a star over here. I'm going to be the next big rapper. And I'm thinking, there's only a handful of rappers that made it. What happened to all the other washed up people who thought they can rhyme and they can bust the rhyme? And they didn't make it. So think about that. So voting with your dollar, your presence, your influence, your support, and then beyond that type of vote, actively going out and preaching against it. That's why I do it. Somebody say, why would you think that's important to preach again? Because I'm telling you, when you see the devastation these things cause, you go around certain communities, you watch the communities are washed up. And you say, why is this community so washed up? Because you have all these washed up dreamers who wanted to be football and basketball and baseball and they didn't make it. Because they say, well, I don't have to do my schoolwork. It's word preaching against. Just to save some. But there are always enough supporters. So when you see the results of evil, hey, you have to just understand it's the supporters. Supporters, you take to me about just about anything going on in society right now. A war in the society in the world over a war that's going on. It's the supporters. There's enough evil people on sometimes both sides to make it happen. And so somebody say, but look at the kids, they're suffering. Yeah, because the parents. You take to me, especially I love democracy. Because democracy is a mass of people voting for whatever they want and whoever they want. Because we just don't support, as individuals, we don't just support evil. We support people who are purveyors of it. So if somebody wants to pervade the idea that I want, I vote for him. And that's the problem. So when the results come, we voted for that result. No, I don't want to be part of that vote, so I will vote and preach against it. So whatever the topic is, so say the topic is hate, as a media thing, a media report, because we're talking about current events. Say hate, greed, warmongering, oppression. You cannot stop a person from being wicked. So an individual you can't stop. But it becomes a big problem when that individual finds supporters. So as I said earlier, you have an individual, he's talking crazy. And he's talking about, these people are causing this problem. And you'll be like, what are you talking about, man? You crazy. There's not like that going on. Like a current example, because this is so fresh and it's like raw meat. And I guess I can't resist. So you have right now, the main thing in America is that the president is saying that the reason why America is being destroyed is because of these foreigners and, everybody that is a minority and so forth. That's raw meat to some people in the society. Just get them all crazy like a mad dog. But if you meet a guy in the street, say you're on a train and you pick up this conversation with this guy and you didn't know who he was. And he says 5 years ago and he's talking, and you don't know who he is, but he's talking about, the problem is with these Mexicans, and the problem is with these, people in the ghetto and stuff like that. That's what's destroying America. And he's talking like that, you'll be like, yeah, man, whatever, man. You ignore him because you're like, he's just a troll and he's just ignorant. He don't know what he's talking about. But then all of a sudden he's talking and people like, and start chanting his name and say, you need to be the next president. And you'd be like, wait a minute. Now this is a problem because this is that madman I used to see on the side of the street. Now people are saying, let's put him to run the country. Now we're in trouble. So then you start to realize, wait a minute. So then it's not so much that sometimes the ideology or the activity is the supporters. And without the supporters, as the Bible says, if there is no wood, the fire goes out. But as long as you keep feeding the firewood, the fire will just keep burning. So is the problem the fire? Is the problem the wood that you're putting in? The problem is yourself. You're putting in the wood. So the flip of that is true when it comes on to righteousness. If you don't see a lot of righteousness, then you know, well, it's because of the society. They're not supporting certain things. So if somebody's here say, hey, let's do the right thing. Let's be fair to everybody. And somebody will be like, nah, you don't vote for someone like that. You do not vote for somebody who is going to do the right thing. You vote for the evildoer who has promised us fried chicken and, chips and burgers. Okay. So the problem becomes a big problem, not so much because there's an individual, because as you say, you could have a guy on the side of the street preaching and he's talking all kind of stuff about the end of the world. And next thing you know, you see that guy there has a mega church, 10,000 people. You're like, whoa. That's a crazy guy we used to see on the side of the street. See the problem? So the sad reality is that an evildoer can so easily find an audience. That's the problem. A person that can be foaming at the mouth and preaching hate can find an audience. A person that's a warmonger can find an audience. An oppressor can easily find an audience because oppression means somebody's being benefited. So often a person can be entertained, and he sings things that are going to demoralize the society, demoralize young ladies and stuff like that, and make them become hoes. And he finds an audience. And then you say, who the biggest follower of this guy? And they say female. And you're like, weird. How's that? When he talk, a female never gonna have a good relationship. She's gonna be beaten. She's gonna be stepped on. She's gonna be used like a doormat. And that's what he's promoting. And female is his biggest audience. That's weird. And then you start finding out in real life. You talk to people a certain way. They tend to, you say, here's this guy, and he will behave bad in school. He's gonna be a failure in life. He'll beat people, fight. And you see this girl over there, and she's like, oh, I love him. And you'll be like, you love him? And then you start looking at her and think, I thought you were sensible. What's wrong with you? And, some people say probably it's a maternal principle where women like to pick up projects. I guess like men like to buy old cars and fix it. It's the same idea, get a project and get a project car and work in it. But you find you're like, this is weird. Because if everybody would not support this person, they said this bully in school, the bully would basically forced to conform. He might not be reformed in his mind, but he would have to force to conform. But the bully can always find supporters. And the moment he finds supporters, then it encourages him to continue down that road. And if you read the article where they were talking about a young man that did a Parkland shooting, Cruz, I think is his last name, and he did a Parkland shooting, and all of a sudden all these letters coming in to him. Now, some of the letters are religious letters, people tell him to find the Lord and so forth, and encouraging him to give his life to the Lord and repent. But they say a lot of the pictures are women sending him pictures with, their breasts and buttocks and stuff like that, and basically, want to connect with him. So they have to destroy those letters so that he don't know, because it's almost like you're encouraging, he does something like this and he becomes a hero of somebody, like somebody want to just love him. And you'll be like, wow. So again, the sad reality is that the individual evildoer so easily find an audience. Also, the same concept can be put on to a false prophet. A false prophet's supporters are responsible for his success and receive the results of his success in their life. See, that's normal. You see this, a person preaching prosperity gospel, and the church pack. And you say, wow. But then you start to hear the stories coming out of the church, and you're like, oh, so they're receiving the benefits of following that false prophet, which is a mess in their lives. So that's what they wanted to hear, and they supported that. And now that false prophet really, who should have hardly no listeners, have an abundance of listeners, and become a very important person. And you say, how did that happen? And when Christ finished his work, he had 120 in the upper room. He started with a big audience, and he wilted down to basically a small little church. The most powerful evangelist, the most powerful preacher that ever walked the face of the planet. At his end, he only had 120. Everybody just run away from him. So how did that happen? But the flip of it is you have these people with 10,000 followers, 20,000 followers, 30,000, 40,000 followers. More if you count the online followers, those who watch. So a false prophet supporters are responsible for his success because they boast him up. They supported that madness. So they also get the results in their life of that success. This is the reality. And the opposite is also true. So when, like I remember, I think last week or the week before, I talked about when we see the increase in disasters, we understand it's the results of the people's vote. The vote comes with a consequence. Election has consequence. It's just people normally think the consequence is whatever is going to be enacted in the country. They normally don't think is whatever is going to be enacted in the country and also God's response to that. Because you can't be a purveyor of oppression and don't think the voters are not going to get the result also. They're going to suffer the consequence. So it's important in your life. I remember a few years ago, there was this famous preaching, the thing that had cropped up amongst Adventists. Now, I remember when the first time I heard the main preacher that was preaching it, I heard him preach, I'm thinking, this guy's crazy. I think what he's preaching is just a bunch of foolishness. And I remember hearing him at a local church and thinking, that's just nonsense. And I dismissed it. I was like, it doesn't make no sense. I don't know how anybody will listen to this. And I went on with my life. And I remember 5 years later, somebody say, you hear about this teaching? And I was like, what teaching are you talking about? And they started telling me about the teaching. I said, isn't it this guy preaching that thing? And they say, yeah. And they said, that thing blew up. And I'm like, what do you mean it blew up? They said, man, the amount of people following that thing, you would not believe. I was like, get out of here. I was like, I can't believe that. And it's like, yeah, that guy has a massive following. I was like, I can't believe this. This is crazy. Only for me to find out that this was true. The person I took on in the like 5 years from the last time I saw the person blew up. And I was like, fascinating. So that person became very successful, quote unquote, successful, preaching confusion. And it just blew my mind. And all of a sudden I realized it is not so much even sometimes the content per se. It's just that if you get enough supporters, then you can seem successful. Because if success is always measured by volume of people or by money, then success is a funny thing to gauge. Because you would say a person who's selling drugs and getting a whole bunch of people on crack or on opiates, if it's a doctor, if he's very successful and he's living large, you would say, well, he's successful. But you don't look and say, yeah, but you look at all the dead people he created. Look how he devastated old communities up and down all across America. Why would you say he's successful? Because he has a lot of money. Look at the money this guy has. This guy's a success. You see, it depends. If you see a warmonger and he goes and he creates war in Yemen and war in Syria and all that, and he's making buku bucks, big bucks, you would say he's successful. But is he successful in the sense of, yeah, that's a lot of dead bodies for that success? I guess that's successful. And that's the problem with that. You could have a preacher preaching nonsense and he's very successful. But you got to remember, the problem is that there's people voted for him with their dollar, their presence, their influence, and their support. And they create a lot of mess. But they're getting the result of their support. Because they're supporting it, and now the mess is going to come and they're going to lose their dollar. They're going to mess up their presence. Because now people are going to be like, that person support that evildoer. Their influence and their support, you don't want that support. I don't vote. Why? Because again, that person is a mess. Why would you, somebody supporting that person and support me? I'm afraid. Like, you supporting me, you're telling me that I'm a mess too. So sometimes the individual and society at large get what they work for and support. So it's very important. They get what they work for and support. And it's important to notice. And that can be a positive thing, and that can be a negative thing. Where's your presence? Well, you're here with me right now, so I know where you're at. But what is it you're supporting? Where does your dollar go? Where does your time go? Where does your ears go? What principles you live by? That's what is telling if you're a Christian or not. As the saying goes, I see what you do, or I hear more what you do than what you say. You can say a lot, but it's what you do. And what you do is telling if you're a Christian or not. Because it's what you're doing. Somebody can say, I'm a Christian, but $500 that they have is not going to go to anything to help the poor, to preach the gospel. It's going to go to the casino, whether you're a Christian. If they have an extra $500, it's going to go to the marijuana emporium. If they have extra $500, it's going to go to pornography. It's going to go to this. It's going to be. Are you a Christian? What are you supporting? Because that's what's telling me what you are. But somebody could say, oh no, it's what I'm saying. Yeah, what I say is important. That's part of your influence. We preach, but we are told is that we bolster what we're preaching by a lifestyle example. I could talk about health, but if you look at my dollar and you say, well, how much money do I spend at the health food store? How much money do I spend at the Indian supermarket, at the Asian supermarket, at the healthy part of the regular supermarket? the European supermarket. Where am I spending my money? And as you look at that, you can tell, am I into it or not? Am I spending the money on exercise equipment? Am I spending the money on anything to make me be motivated? What am I spending my money on? Where do my influence? And that's tell you where you're at and how your light is shining, because that's what you're supporting. Because if you're in a community and you're part of the success of, say, a coffee store, but then the health food store down the road is dying for customers, then what's your vote and your influence? Are you part of the success of the society or the failure? And somebody say, well, what's one cup of smoothie is going to make a difference, or one cup of coffee? It was one cup. They counted every customer in every cup. And if that one cup is going to help, somebody, because I've been into a store, and if there's 10 more people in the store feel like I need to be in the store. And if you know what I'm talking about, your presence make it feel like, oh man, business is happening. You want to go back there because this is the hot store. There's a store recently I found in New York City, in Harlem. I think it's off near 125th. And when you go to that store is like crazy, because no matter what time of the day I go to the store, it's like a juice, they do smoothies and juice and stuff like that. And you go to that store, it doesn't matter what time of the day you go to the store, that place is packed. And if I go there, it's 90% of the customers are male. It's a weird store. I've never seen anything like this before. You go to a store and 90% of those that are in the store are male. And sometimes I've been there before where it's 100% male. No female in the store. It's packed, and it's packed. You have to kind of move around people to get in and out of the store. Literally, it's a small store, but you got to move around to get in and out. And it feels like it's the right place. Like if you're a guy and you went to that store, you feel like, there's no advertisement saying it's a guy store, but it feels like that's where guys go to get their stuff, their shots, and nothing. It's all organic and natural and vegan, but it's just the place is always packed. I can't understand. There's never less than probably 10 people, or no, probably never less than 6 people in there, but sometimes more people outside, people inside trying to wait to get their stuff. Fascinating. And so that place is, and always backing up traffic because people double park in front of the store. So there's always cars honking and stuff like that because it's locking up the traffic in that area. And you're thinking, man, that's the spot. But that's, to me, is part of the influence. Now somebody say, but the coffee store down the road is doing more business. I understand. But praise the Lord for that one store that's doing that type of business. But if all these people say, well, what we're going to do? We're going to go with the coffee store because that's the hot store. Well, that hot store not going to make no money. And then you're going to be complaining when people coming out with cancers and people coming out with all these different type of diseases. Well, why complain? Because that's what you're supporting. Support the thing that's going to make better for society. And I think it's the same in religion. It's the same in everything. As I say, you can look at whatever problem is going on. I decided this morning I didn't want to talk about all the problems or any specific problem. I just want to talk about a generic philosophy. What is it you're supporting? And don't tell me that, well, what is your support going to do? Your support is going to make a difference. It's one support. But when a person sit there on their support, as they say, and they sit there and they don't support, well, you're helping a media, you're helping a business, you're helping something to not be successful by not supporting. You're part of the problem. And then now you're going to say, oh, look at the society. It's all these crazy kids. Well, how I look at it is that every time I see a kid, they're atheists and they don't believe in God and they're shooting up the place, I'm thinking, that's one more kid that went through the church and never heard a sermon that really dealt with creation and evolution, never really dealt with really faith in God because they're busy talking about worship and, and talking about grace-orientated messages and stuff like that. And they failed. And somebody said, but that's just one church. Yeah, but think about that and you aggregate that across the country. And you see all these young people went into church, never heard a message because I went to those churches. You would never hear anything to counter anything going on in society. And then the kids come out messed up and grow up to be mass murderers and stuff. And you're like, that's the problem, because each individual say, well, what am I going to do? It's a failure anyhow, and they made no effort. And what's the result? Well, that's the result. So somebody can complain and say, why? Or somebody can say, Lord, why you even make an effort? Because I prefer to make an effort than to die. I prefer to say to die trying. than to sit there and say, I'm not going to use my money and my influence and my time to push and to counter. If I push and counter on one person here, it's worth the time because that's one less evildoer and one more person converted to Jesus. This is why I believe it's worth the time. I guess I'll read this text because I didn't get to read any of the texts I have here, except for one. So I read a second one. Matthew chapter 7, verse 13 through 20. Matthew chapter 7, verse 13 through 20 says, Enter ye at the straight gate, for wide is the gate, and broad is the way that lead to destruction, and many there be which go in thereat. Why? Because it says, because straight is the gate and narrow is the way which lead unto life, and few there be that find it. So here Christ really teaches it very clear. Don't be worried because the majority will forsake you and forsake me by God's grace. Don't worry about that. Don't worry that says we walk a narrow path as the salt of the earth and the light of the earth, and that most people will never be on our wavelength. Don't worry about that. I remember years back when I became vegan, and I'm sure many of you know this story for your own personal self and your own personal experience. The options weren't there. But every time another person came on board, it widened the market. So a manufacturer would say, well, probably it's worth putting out a vegan butter. Probably it's worth putting out a vegan, plant-based milk alternative for all the people that are allergic to casein and all that type of stuff and lactose intolerant. But if somebody didn't decide to say, no what happened, I'll go buy the one product over there, another person would think, oh, there's a market. So don't think that your one influence does not count because, well, broad is the way. And most people are going to go to hell and let them go there. That's their choice. They choose to go where everybody else go. You don't have to. Our influence has value. Don't never discount your influence. Your support has value. Even what I'm doing here, somebody might say, you just listen. Every time you listen and you don't support by even texting me, calling me, or donating, what you're doing, you're weakening my hand to be able to move forward. But every time I say, okay, there's one more person who is supportive, you strengthen my hand so that I can move because I'm limited by my what I have available. But the more available, the more I can build. If it's worth building. But if it's not worth building, cut it off. As I say, why false prophets survive and do well? Because it's supporters. Notice I think I have enough time. I'll read the rest of the text. It says, beware of false prophets which come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they are ravening wolves. Ye shall know them by their fruits. Do men gather grapes of thorns and figs of thistle? Even so every good tree bringeth forth good fruit, but a corrupt tree bringeth forth evil fruit. A good tree cannot bring forth evil fruit, neither can a corrupt tree bring forth good fruit. Every tree that bringeth not forth good fruit is hewn down and cast into fire. Wherefore, Christ simply says, wherefore, by their fruits you shall know them. You're supporting what is blessing. That's simply what it is. You support what is blessing. You look at it and say, what's going on in the nation now is because people were willing to support things that never were supposed to be supported. What's going on with the oppression, the wars, the gang violence, the gang banging, the trailer parks with the filter lifestyle, or the alcohol and stuff is being consumed because people willing to consume, so somebody keep producing. But if people say, hey, look, I need some fresh spring water, now all of a sudden the big business right now is water. People say, hey, look, I need some fresh organic produce. Now people are like, hey, look, I need to go turn my farm organic because somebody's supporting. Don't never discount your support of something that is positively good and say, well, what's one support going to do? That's one more support that's going to make it possible for there to be a market, so for there to be more production and so forth. But when you see evil, remember that there's people supporting the evil. That's why it exists. It's not there by accident. There's enough supporters. Wars, a president can't fight a war. One individual can't fight a war. That's just a fist fight or a shootout. But when you have a lot of people supporting, that's where war comes from. There's enough supporters. Without the supporters, all of that contention cease. And that's the reality. So you just look at this principle and think about that. What is it you're supporting? What is society supporting? Whatever they support, many times they're getting the result or the fruits of their support. And that's all that's happening. They're getting whipped. They want to believe that they evolve and that they come from chimps. they're getting the results of it. That's all. Let's pray. Our Father, who art in heaven, we pray that you may bless us, guide us, and we pray, the Lord, that your mercy might be upon us, that we might be merciful and bless those that are suffering, bless those that are out of the way, just as you have blessed us, dear Lord, and called us into your marvelous light. May you continue to be our guide, that we might be like thee in every aspect of life. This is our prayer in Jesus' name. Amen. Thanks for being with me here. Looking forward to talking to you tomorrow morning, where we should talk about wisdom for living. Until then, I pray you may continue to walk with the King.